Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 45, where I'm going to ask you not to be so kind in your writing. What am I talking about? Let me explain. When you're writing, of course, there's a number of things that you should bear in mind, and the register of your writing, in other words, how formal it is or how informal it is something to think about. It has to be appropriate. If you're writing to someone higher up in the hierarchy, then you want perhaps the message to be more formal. If there's a business culture which allows for a certain amount of informality, then formal writing would not be appropriate in that case. So register is important. Also, context is important. You've got to think about the context from a number of different ways, and that's something I've talked about in my videos before. So the context that how you want to produce yourself, the context of what the reader wants from your writing. And indeed, if you want your writing to be successful, you have to frame it in the correct context. And part of doing that, the third point here, is vocabulary flexibility and grammar flexibility, because different forms of grammar structures, different forms of vocabulary, particularly as regards register, will help you to craft a message that will be a successful message. So there's a number of things that we want to think about when we're writing. But one thing that we also have to think about and be aware of is that by using one word, you cannot artificially force a context or register or show yourself in the best possible light. And that's what I think is going wrong with the word kindly. That's why I said don't be so kind. I'm referring to those of you who write emails in particular with kindly, particularly if you misuse that structure. Okay, so we've got two uses of kindly, inappropriate uses of kindly here. Why? We kindly ask you to send the payment as soon as possible. More than likely, the business context is that you want someone to do something. So we have got a form for that, and I'll show you what that is in a second. I've done a lesson about this before. We've got to use the appropriate question form, a question form which will lead the reader into acting in the way that you want them to act, okay? Just by creating a demand, which is really what this is, and putting kindly in it, is not appropriate to get what you want to happen. It's not a question. You're simply saying, do it, and it can easily be ignored. With the second sentence, we ask you to kindly pay the invoice immediately, much the same as the first, but the mistake here is that we're asking someone else to do something kindly, which doesn't make much sense. At least in the first example, it's something that you are doing. We kindly ask you to do something. So the focus on the kind action is our action. But in the second sentence, what we're asking the reader to do is we're asking the reader to do something kindly, which kind of doesn't make sense. But then this is how I see kindly being misused. So how could we redraft this appropriately? Well, of course, we've got a number of options. We could say, using an indirect question form, could you pay the invoice as soon as possible? Or we could go about this indirectly, and we could say, did you receive our email of the 2nd of April, for example? And then we could go into the indirect question form. So there is an appropriate way to do this using indirect forms. So what are the teaching tips? As always, keep it simple. Indirect question forms are a simple structure to get used to, and they are very effective in terms of getting what we want to happen. They can't be mistaken. It's a very clear question. We use strong verbs. It's very effective, as I said. We use established, trusted, simple language structures, of which an indirect question form is one. Simply using an advanced or a sophisticated structure and throwing kindly in there somewhere is not appropriate. Okay, guys? If you mean to ask a question, then ask a question. This is something I've said repeatedly in my lessons. If you do not ask a question, then it can simply be ignored. At least from one point of view, if you ask a question, you can defend yourself. If someone says, why hasn't this happened, then you can say, well, I clearly asked someone to do something. Here is the question. They haven't done anything. So using indirect question forms not only is an effective form of communication, it also helps to defend you. You can't force formality or politeness by using one word, okay? Just as I said, just by using kindly in a sentence, or even for that matter, please, doesn't make it a nice sentence, particularly if you use words such as immediately or more grandiose words like forthwith or something like this. Is just saying kindly and please isn't going to suddenly make it polite. And of course, if you avoid this structure, then it makes your writing less archaic and more natural. And just to put that in, look at that from the other side, whenever I see a sentence with kindly in it, automatically it affects the way that I approach the text, and it makes me a little bit worried about what's going to come next. Am I going to see more legalese? Am I going to see more difficult structures? Am I going to see more inappropriate vocabulary? So avoiding the use of kindly means that you avoid some traps in writing. Okay guys, time for you to think about some questions. Now, if you're watching this on Patreon, please click on the link below the video, download the questions and redraft them to remove the uses of kindly. I'm asking you to identify a problem and start building good habits. If you're watching this on YouTube, LinkedIn or on Facebook, then please think about joining me and supporting me on Patreon, where you're going to get access to all of my questions, my answer videos, and a whole lot more. So to give you an example of the thing I'd like you to do, we've got an example here. We kindly request that you upload documents to the VDR. Once again, what we're doing really is we're asking a question because we want something to happen. So could you upload documents to the VDR? Okay guys, have fun with the questions, and then when you're finished, have a look at my answer videos to see if your answers are similar to mine.